For this section, we're going to go over cubes and cube roots. Now, cubes means to the third power. So what it means by to the third power is 1 to the third equals, so the 1 will multiply itself 3 times. So 1 times 1 times 1, which will be 1. Now if I were to do 2 to the third power, so it would be 2 times 2 times 2. So if I were to do this step by step, 2 times 2 is 4, and now bring down this 2 over here, so 4 times 2 is 8. And then if I were to do 3 to the third power, so it means 3 times 3 times 3. And if I were to do this step by step, I do the first 3, which is 9, and then I bring down the last 3, so 9 times 3 is 27. Now, the first 3 example I use positive numbers, but what happened if I use a negative number? So let's say instead of positive 3, I use negative 3. And see how I wrote it in parentheses with the exponent outside? So, whenever you have an exponent and there's parentheses on the base, that means that I'm multiplying itself 3 times. So since it's negative 3 will multiply itself 3 times. So if I were to do this step by step, negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. And then I bring down the last negative 3. So positive 9 times negative 3 equals negative 27. So, see that there's a difference. So if a positive number is being cubed, raised to the third power, then it'll be a positive number. If it's a negative number being raised to the third power, it will be a negative answer. So that's where we have to be very careful when we're working with our cube. So positive 1 to the third power is positive 1. Positive 2 to the third power is positive 8. Positive 3 to the third power is positive 27. Negative 3 to the third power is negative 27. So the same principle applies to positives and negatives. So positive 4 will have a positive answer. So a negative 5 to the third power will have a negative answer. So that's pretty much for cubes. Let's talk about cube roots. So it's very similar to what we did in squares, perfect squares, and square roots. So let's say we want to do 8. So the cube root will look like this. So if I'm doing the cube root of 8, 8 will be on the inside of this root, but since it's cubed, there's going to be a little 3 at the top left corner. So cube root means a number times itself 3 times. So based on what we have here, a number times itself 3 times would be 2. So the cube root of 8 is just simply 2, and that's our answer. Now, let's say we do 125. So the cube root of 125 is again a number times itself 3 times. Now that would be 5. And again, I need to specify this is my positive 5. So the cube root of 125 is positive 5. Now, how come it's not negative 5? Well, let's do negative 5 to the third power. So negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5. If I do this step by step, negative 5 times negative 5 will be a positive 25. And then I bring down the last negative 5. So 25 times negative 5 is negative 125. So, see how there's a difference? So when it comes to cube roots, if it started off with a positive number, your answer would be positive. And if your number is going to start off with negative, then it should be a negative number. So, as you can see, negative 5 to the third power will equal to a negative 125. So, that means that had you start off with negative 125 and it's asking you to do the cube root, so again, if you see a 3, that means cube. So it's talking about a number times itself 3 times. Since it's negative, it's going to be negative 5 multiply itself 3 times. So therefore, again, the negative 125. When you're doing the cube root of negative 125, then the answer is just negative 5. So, to review, if you're doing the cube root of positive numbers, it would be positive. If you're doing the cube root of negative numbers, it would be negative. So the cube root of positive 8 is positive 2. The cube root of positive 125 is positive 5. The cube root of negative 125 is just negative 5. So this is different from the square roots where you have two answers, positive and negative. But when you do cube roots, your answer is either positive or negative based on what you have at the very beginning. And then there's something you should remember. Cube roots, square roots are the first two. Now there's going to be more, such as the fourth root, the fifth root, and so on. So fourth root, fifth root, sixth root, seventh root, and so on. But remember, when it says root, it does not mean to divide. So fourth root, fifth root does not equal to divide. So again, when you have a root, when you're looking for a root, any kind of root, square root, cube root, fourth root, and so on, it does not mean to divide. Simply you're trying to find the base times itself based on what you have to root. So for example, cube root, you're finding the smaller base, which is 2, that multiply itself 3 times to give you 8. Same thing right here, 125. You want to find a smaller base times itself 3 times will give you the 125, which is 5. So again, any kind of roots, it does not mean divide.